Hello everyone, Eddie Zamora, the Yum Yum Foodie here, and welcome to my WayBetter game. Now, in the next few videos, you're gonna learn how to make some legit Cuban food. You're gonna learn how to make a Cuban cocktail, you're gonna learn how to make some Cuban side dishes, and then one of my favorite dishes, ropa vieja. But before any Cuban cooking happens in this household, something has to go down. And in the first video, you're gonna learn how to make a Cuban café con leche, a legit Cuban café con leche, because you'll go out to some coffee shops and they'll tell you this is a Cuban latte. No, that is not a Cuban latte unless you're in Miami or you're in my house here in Los Angeles and you're having it just like this. So what makes a Cuban coffee? What makes café con leche Cuban? Well, there's a couple of signature things. One thing is that in like a traditional Cuban café con leche, we're actually not going to use regular milk. No, we're going to use evaporated milk. That milk that comes in a can that is not sweetened condensed milk. That stuff is great too, but no, that's not what we're using for our café con leche. We're using evaporated milk. I'm using regular whole milk, evaporated milk. They also make a fat-free version of it, which I actually like too, because evaporated milk in general, it's a little bit more viscous, so it's a little bit thicker. I find that skim milk can be sometimes a little bit watery for my taste. So the skim evaporated milk actually is a little bit thicker, a little bit more viscous, and it's going to work really well in one of these lattes as well. But for this one, I am doing the traditional café con leche. I mean, I just use Carnation because you can find it anywhere. You can use the store-bought brand as well. They usually run about $1 a can, and I can usually pull out of one can, let's say 4 café con leches. 4 café con leches, conservatively, I can rock out of a single can of Carnation milk. Secondly, what makes it Cuban? It's gotta be Cuban coffee, Cuban espresso. So I'm using a little bit of Café La Llave. You can find it all over the country. It's roasted here in California actually, but this is like a brand, one of those brands you find in Miami. When you're a kid growing up, you walk in, everybody's house has like one of these little vacuum sealed bricks. And I saved this special for you because one of my favorite things in the world is like when you crack open the vacuum sealed brick and you smell like fresh coffee. It's kind of like equivalent to when you get that new cell phone and you peel the plastic. There's something so gratifying about that. So you get to join me on that experience. And then last but not least, it's actually a pinch of salt. The way my grandmother, my Cuban abuelita would make it is that a pinch of salt always goes into the milk when it's being frothed for your café con leche, and it actually kind of brings out the sweetness in it. So I'm gonna learn a couple of techniques that I think actually can enhance the flavor in your café con leche and bring down the sugar a little bit too as well. I'm using an espresso machine. I know most people do not have an espresso machine at home. I do a lot with coffee, so I kind of collect coffee machines. It's a thing for me. And one day I sat down and I looked at my credit card statement and I realized how much money I was spending out and about on espresso. And I said I could have bought a really nice espresso machine this year. So what I bought a really nice espresso machine. But don't worry, if you don't have an espresso machine, that's okay, because your traditional tabletop, this is what we call this a cafetera in Spanish, but your traditional little tabletop, or pardon me, little stovetop espresso maker is gonna work just fine for this, for making your espresso. And don't worry, if you don't have a milk frother like I have on my machine, any saucepan. So you can use a saucepan just like this. You're gonna put your milk in there and you're gonna whisk it and simmer it. And I mean, if some people have those little electric frothers that you can put in there, you can use one of those too. Again, the flavor is the Cuban part of it, but if you like it a little bit more foamy, if you wanna make it more like a cappuccino, I'm not gonna argue with you because you're the one that's gonna drink it. I'm gonna drink this one. So I'm making this the way my grandmother would make it growing up in Miami, even though my grandmother would probably she'd yell at me for putting this machine here, and she would want to make it on a traditional cafetera, but that's okay. So let's start with the piece de resistance, which is the cutting open of the café. And Cuban coffee is traditionally Arabica beans. So let's say, for example, you can't go out and you don't find a brand like Café La Llave, or there's other brands like Pilon, Bustelo. They're all traditional Cuban style, like dark roast coffee. That's okay, as long as you find 100% Arabica coffee, and you're good to go. Even if you have a machine, you got 100% Arabica beans and you want to grind them like a fine espresso grind, you're fine with that as well. But I'm making this like as legit. So if you walked into a restaurant in Miami, my hometown, even though I live here in California, Miami's my hometown. If you walk into a restaurant in Miami and you're like, hey, let me get a café con leche. And they're like, okay, whatever. And then you're like, wait a second, but I want it with evaporated milk. They're gonna be like, oh, this person knows what's up. They know the real deal of how a Cuban café con leche is. So that's what we're gonna make, okay. And also, if you have that Cuban friend that comes over and you're like, hey, I'm gonna say Manny is a good generic Cuban name. Hey Manny, you want a Cuban café con leche? It's gonna look at you like you're crazy, first of all. Secondly, he's gonna see you bust out the evaporated milk, and Manny is gonna be like, okay, well, I guess they watched Eddie's game in WayBetter and they know what's up. So, all right, first off, let's get our coffee going. Sorry, you can't see this on camera, but I don't wanna spill. This is so good. And I can hear the air seeping into the vacuum seal. So it's cool. These little vacuum sealers are actually, packets are great because they, like, the shelf life is great. And if you see there is a ton of coffee. And this smells amazing. And if you ever want to find out what's in my luggage and why it's overweight when I bring it from Miami back to LA, it's usually because I have a bunch of bricks of Cuban coffee mixed in with my luggage. Because ironically, even though this is made here in Los Angeles by a Cuban family, it's actually cheaper for me to buy it in Miami, like half the price. So go crazy, right? All right, here we go. And again, don't worry, and I even say you can find these online as well. They're not ridiculously expensive. I mean, I want to say a brick of this is maybe $3.50, so it's nothing crazy. Whichever brand you buy, it's going to be around that price point. So now I like to keep it in a little bit of a container that, you know, get the air out, because air and coffee aren't exactly really good friends. So you want the least amount of oxygen to spend time on there. So you don't want this to sit open for a really long time. Once you open your pack of coffee, try to go through it. The flavor is gonna start to go. I know they say sometimes put it in the freezer, and yeah, I've just noticed after a while, I don't care for the taste of coffee that's been stored in the freezer for a while. So that's just a personal preference thing, and I think there's something to it. So this is my little coffee container. Smells legit, it smells amazing. This is one of my favorite smells. It just reminds me of you know, my dad coming home and my grandmother making coffee for him, because I didn't always drink coffee when I was little. I didn't start drinking until I got older, and café con leche is kind of how they got me into drinking coffee. But this smell just, I don't know, it's nostalgic for me. It takes me back to Miami in the 80s, which was an amazing time to be living there. So here is our milk. It says to shake it well, so like, you know, like you're mixing a cocktail in a shaker. Get it nice and shaken up. Open our little can. And again, like I said before, you don't feel compelled to have, I don't want you to feel discouraged because you don't have an espresso machine. It will come out delicious if you make it stovetop, okay? So trust me on this, it'll be just as good. This is just a little bit more efficient. Now, I usually pour, I'd say about a third of the can in here. And if you find, because this is for some folks too, sometimes you may say to yourself, after you try the evaporated milk, you're like, man, it's a little bit thicker than, I love it this way. For me, I want it to like fill your entire palate, every single sip of that latte. And I can't tell you a single person that I've had try one of these that hasn't been kind of, because, you know, it's literally milk, coffee, sugar, salt. But once you make that shift to the evaporated milk, everybody that I know that's tried one has always been kind of blown away by it. It's one of those things like, wait, I've been drinking lattes my whole life, and now all of a sudden, like, whoa, what is this? So here we go. So I got my milk in my can, and then I'm going for my sugar. Traditionally, we're gonna use white sugar. I am actually become a fan of coconut sugar. I kind of like the flavor profile of it now. But if you want to go traditional, go white sugar. I'm not going to get mad if you share pictures with me of you making this with brown sugar, coconut sugar. I say if you're going to go traditional, go white sugar. But I'm using just a little tiny bit of coconut sugar. Literally just two. Coconut sugar is not as sweet, but it's also lower on the glycemic index, so it's a little bit, quote unquote, less sugary, let's say. So I put 3 little spoons. And here's the trick. Here's a trick that I've noticed. Sometimes people over sugar Cuban coffee. If you've ever had Cuban coffee anywhere in Miami, you're like, whoa, is this sugar with coffee or what? It's more the other way around now. What I do is when you heat your milk, it's actually gonna start melting the sugar. And if you're mixing it, it's kind of distributing the sugar evenly throughout your entire can of steamed milk, which is kind of key. You can use less sugar and get equal distribution of it. So it's not like you have no sugar on that first sip and then all of a sudden it's really sugary at the bottom. No, this is gonna ensure that you've got sweetness even sweetness throughout your entire latte. And now I'm gonna fill up my coffee, guy. So I'm gonna make a double shot because, you know, that's how I roll. I make a double shot of espresso. That is my thing. And there we go. So I have the little double shot setting ready on here. And then I have a tamper, so I am gonna flatten it out just to make it, I mean, if you have the option of making it just like you would at a coffee shop, why not do that at home? So, especially nowadays, we're not going out as much. We're definitely not visiting the coffee shop as much. So I say if you have the means and you can invest in a good coffee machine, I think this Breville for the money is probably the best one I could find. So I'm super happy with that. Here we go. And let me get my can of milk out of the way. Make sure this guy's nice and locked. And I'm gonna do, like I said, a double shot. But I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna leave that there right now and now start steaming my milk. And again, don't worry if you don't have the steam wand, you could do this. It's just gonna take a little bit longer. You can do it on the stovetop. You just wanna make sure, obviously, that it doesn't boil. I mean, if I remember correctly, the temperature, if you had the thermometer, the barista thermometer, I wanna say they have like a little red marker on the thermometer that you don't wanna surpass when you have it and you're steaming your milk. I wanna say it's around 180 degrees, but look, my thermometer is the back of my hand, so I'm gonna put this guy in there. Sometimes I even put my spoon in so that I can mix in the sugar, and this guy's getting ready to give me some steam in just a moment. And one thing that I love about an espresso machine with a steamer is that it's just that evenness of the steam and the foam, because, you know, maybe you're trying to cut down on the amount of milk you're drinking. Well, in a steamer, it's gonna expand and give you more with less. Where on the stovetop one, I mean, unfortunately, that's just it. It is what it is. It's not gonna really expand it too much unless you have a frother. So here we go. And I'm getting a little bit of foam going. I don't want to get too many bubbles. And cool thing about coffee culture in Miami, I'm gonna let this go for a second, is we have something called La Ventana. La Ventana at a Cuban restaurant literally it means a window. And it's a walk-up window where you order espresso. So you can walk up to just about any Cuban restaurant in Miami, and they're gonna have their own little separate coffee section just for you to walk up and, you know, get a coffee, get a pastry, glass of water, talk a little bit, and get in and get out of there. Because if you've ever been to Miami, we're always in a hurry to get somewhere. I don't know where we're trying to go. Yeah, this is getting hot to the point where it's almost burning my hands. I say that's usually my telltale sign. Another thing, if you ever have one of these espresso machines, you want to prime it. So before you turn it off, you got to turn it back on, and it's going to help clean out anything that might be left in the steam wands. Anything like the little dry milk that's on the outside. My faucet's right here under the camera, so I'm actually going to clean up real quick. I like to leave the espresso machine nice and clean. This is from working at a hotel restaurant here in Los Angeles. I really learned how to maintain an espresso machine. It's one of these things where it's like a car. If you maintain it, it's going to last you a really long time. I guess it depends on the car brand, right? But no, with a coffee machine, it's going to last you a really long time. Now I'm going to put a pinch of salt in my milk. Okay, just a little pinch. I'm going to stir that up. And if you have an espresso machine, you're gonna get bubbles on the top of your latte. So if you have an opportunity, just bang it down and make these little bubbles pop so you have just less bubbles. Nothing, nothing crazy. You just want a little bit less. Well, this milk is perfect temperature. I can even smell the coconut sugar in there. It's kind of caramelized inside with the steam from that wand. And now I'm gonna get my nice little coffee cup. And this coffee cup, actually I have it warmed up. You can't feel it obviously, but that's a little trick too. One thing you can always do is run a little hot water under your coffee mug, or get your coffee mug in there, put some hot water in there and warm it up, okay? And there's my dog barking. Hold on one second. He's gonna join us for the last portion of this video, guys. This is Indy. Say hi, Indy. He gets really excited whenever the UPS person drives down the street. So that's Indy getting excited. Are you okay now? Do you want some coffee? No, he doesn't want any coffee. He's already sweet enough. Okay, so sorry about that, guys, but that's life. Life hands you lemons, you make Cuban coffee. Okay, so now I'm gonna make a double shot. Like I said, I like a double shot of coffee. Luckily, I have my 2-button double shot. Let this guy go. And I know I'm lucky I have a nice espresso machine. So before Indy started barking, I was talking about warming your cup. That's just a nice little trick to be able to do. That's why also, you ever notice at a coffee shop, the coffee cups are on top of the machine? That's because the heat from the machine is naturally warming the cups. So they call this the cup warmer, the little area on top of the espresso machine. See, if you don't have an espresso machine, that's all good. And let's see, almost got my espresso going. Oh yeah, beautiful. All right, beautiful. So, I don't know if you can see it, it's got some nice crema. Crema is that little golden kind of foam at the top. It's another beautiful thing about having an espresso machine. Sorry guys, I'm not trying to make you jealous, but it is a wonderful investment that I'll tell anybody to dive into. And I'm sorry, I'm not a fancy barista. I'm not drawing hearts into my coffee. I wish I knew how to do that, but you know, I'm too busy trying to enjoy my delicious latte. So I am gonna fill this guy up. And just like that, I have been whisked away back home to my hometown of Miami, Florida. And last but not least, there are these little cookies. They're called Maria cookies. They're the equivalent of tea biscuits, but for Spaniards. So like British, like tea biscuits, these little cookies. They even say Maria on them. They're originally from Spain, and they're the perfect little cookie to dunk in a Cuban café con leche. I can't begin to explain to you. You're looking at probably breakfast for 75% of Cuban Americans living in Miami is a café con leche and some Maria cookies. But the irony is that's not only breakfast, it's also lunch. It might be after dinner. So that's why I wanted to make sure that the café con leche was the first thing that I showed you how to make, because you're definitely gonna want a little bit of rocket fuel getting you ready for the rest of the video. So thanks again for joining my game. Little Cuban food with me, Eddie Zamora, the Yum Yum Foodie. I cannot wait to see you making these Cuban café con leches. And I want you to say it just like me, café con leche, okay? Café con leche, I wanna practice it. There's no R ruling, café con leche. All right, guys, I can't wait to see what you share. Thanks again, and get ready, because food is coming up soon.